Your mind is your only true weapon, but most never learn how to sharpen it. Musashi didn't conquer with strength, he conquered with clarity, with focus so absolute that fear had no room to exist. In this message, I will teach you how to forge an unstoppable mind, one that does not flinch, one that does not break, one that slices through distraction, doubt, and emotion like a sword through silence. This is how warriors think. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? You win in the mind or you don't win at all. Look at the world around you. The people who dominate are not always the strongest physically. They are the strongest mentally. This is the first truth you must understand if you seek mastery in anything. I am Miyamoto Musashi. I fought 60 duels and never lost. Not because my arm was strongest, but because my mind never wavered. The real battle was won before the sword was drawn. But here's what most people don't understand. Every external battle is first an internal one. Every achievement, every victory, every moment of breakthrough begins in the battleground of your thoughts. Most live defeated lives because they've already lost in their minds. They tell themselves stories of limitation. They rehearse failure. They imagine worst outcomes. And then they wonder why reality follows the same dark path. The difference between the warrior and the ordinary man. The warrior controls the battlefield of the mind. The ordinary man is controlled by it. Your thoughts are not passive observers. They are active creators. Each thought is a seed that grows into the garden of your life. Plant weakness, and you will harvest defeat. Plant strength, and you will harvest victory. When I faced opponents stronger than myself, it was not muscle that saved me. It was mental discipline. While they thought of winning, I thought of cutting. While they worried about death, I had already accepted it. My mind was clear. Theirs was clouded. This is why I say to you now, master your thoughts. Or someone else will. Society, media, friends, enemies, all seek to program your mind. The untrained mind is easily conquered territory. But let me ask you this. Who rules your thoughts right now? Is it you, or is it fear? Is it clarity, or confusion? Is it purpose, or distraction? Before you pick up any weapon, before you start any business, before you attempt any worthy goal, sharpen your mind, because the mind is where battles are truly won or lost. In the face of challenge, the untrained mind panics. It sees only threats, obstacles, reasons to retreat. The disciplined mind sees differently. It finds openings, pathways, and opportunities. Invisible to others, I once defeated a master swordsman using only a wooden oar that I carved into a weapon on my way to the duel. My advantage was not the weapon. It was that I had already won in my mind while he was still wondering how I might fight. You must reach this state, where victory is determined by your mental clarity, not by external circumstances, where your focus is so complete that nothing can disturb it. When you face uncertainty, remember this. Uncertainty exists only in the mind that lacks discipline. The trained mind creates certainty through absolute presence. The mind that races to 1,000 different futures is weak. The mind that stands fully in this moment is unstoppable. Most people believe they're thinking when they're merely reacting. Reaction is not thought, it's mental slavery. True thinking is deliberate, controlled, directed. Your brain constantly presents you with thoughts, but you decide which ones to entertain. This is the beginning of mental mastery, the understanding that you can choose your thoughts as carefully as a swordsman chooses when to strike. I wrote in my book of 5 rings, the way is in training. Your mind must be trained daily, hourly, with each breath. No different than a sword must be polished and sharpened. Your thoughts must be disciplined. Start here. Become aware of your thoughts without becoming attached to them. Watch how they arise. Notice how they try to control you, and then assert your authority over them. The battlefield of the mind is where your future is decided. Win there first. Will you waver when pressure comes? Will you crumble when challenges arise? Or will you stand unmoved, your mind quiet and deadly in its focus? These questions are not answered in the moment of crisis. They are answered in how you train your mind now, today, when no one is watching. Remember, you win in the mind, or you don't win at all. The rest is merely consequence. Confusion kills. Clarity cuts. When I stood before an opponent, I did not fill my mind with techniques, with possibilities, with the 1,000 ways the battle might unfold. I emptied it. I made it a perfect mirror, reflecting only what was necessary, what was true. Most minds today are cluttered battlefields, opinions wrestling with facts, desires fighting fears, information battling for attention, and in this chaos, you expect to find victory? Impossible. The untrained mind collects. The warrior's mind eliminates. Let me tell you what clarity truly is. It is not knowing many things. It is knowing exactly what matters and cutting away everything else. This is how I defeated opponents who knew more techniques than I did. They had knowledge. I had clarity. But here's what most people don't understand. Clarity is not something you find. It is something you create through ruthless elimination. Every morning upon waking, ask yourself, what is essential today? What deserves my mental energy? What can I discard, cut away the unnecessary, until only purpose remains? Society trains you to complicate, to overthink, to analyze endlessly. This is mental weakness disguised as intelligence. True power comes from simplicity. I once defeated an opponent who had studied 10,000 sword techniques. Do you know how? With a single cut that I had practiced 100,000 times. His mind juggled possibilities. Mine executed certainty. Clarity does not mean ignoring complexity. It means seeing through it, perceiving the essential reality beneath the surface. The master's mind penetrates confusion like a blade through fog. But let me ask you this. How cluttered is your thinking right now? How many unnecessary concerns occupy your mental space? How much of what you worry about is truly essential? People cannot sit in silence for 10 minutes without their thoughts scattering like startled birds. This is why they cannot win their battles. Their minds are too noisy to hear the approach of defeat. In my life, I sought empty spaces, simple rooms, minimal possessions. Not from poverty of ambition, but from clarity of purpose. Each possession you own owns a piece of your mind. Each commitment divides your focus. True clarity feels like emptiness at first. The untrained mind fears this emptiness and rushes to fill it with distraction. The warrior welcomes it, for in this space, perfect action is born. Think of water. When still, it perfectly reflects reality. When agitated, it shows only fragments and distortion. Your mind is the same. Stillness creates clarity. Movement creates confusion. The practice is simple but demanding. Reduce everything to its essence. In conversation, speak only what matters. In conflict, see only what threatens. In opportunity, perceive only what serves your purpose. I once wrote, "The primary thing when you take a sword in your hands is your intention to cut the enemy, whatever the means." This is clarity. One intention, undivided. Not 20 intentions competing for control. Modern minds are weak because they are divided. You try to pursue 10 goals at once and wonder why you achieve none. You entertain 15 different perspectives and wonder why you lack conviction. Clarity is the blade that cuts through this trap. Choose one path, eliminate options, burn the bridges to retreat. Now watch how your mind sharpens when it has no escape routes. When facing a decision, I ask, what would I do if I had only this single opportunity to act? The answer usually becomes clear immediately. The multiple options were merely hesitation, wearing the mask of careful thought. Simplify your language to clarify your thinking. Use fewer words, stronger words. Eliminate qualifiers. Don't say "I might" or "I'll try." These weaken your mental resolve. Say "I will" or say nothing. Clear. Thinking requires clear boundaries. Know what you refuse to do. Know what you will never compromise. These are not limitations. They are the edges that define your blade. When your mind is foggy, do not make decisions. Do not speak. Do not act. First, create clarity through silence, through breath, through elimination of the non-essential. The warrior's mind is not complicated. It is devastatingly simple. It sees what is. It acts on what matters. It discards everything else. This is why I say, confusion kills, clarity cuts. Sharpen your thinking until it cuts through doubt, distraction, and fear in a single stroke. The most dangerous opponent lives inside your head. Do you hear it? The constant chatter, the endless commentary, the voice that speaks when no one else is around. This is your inner dialogue, and it will determine your victory or defeat. Long. Before you face any external challenge, most people never realize they are hosting an enemy within. They allow this voice to weaken them, to question them, to paralyze them with doubt. And they wonder why they cannot overcome obstacles that others seem to conquer with ease. But here's what most people don't understand. This voice is not you. It is a collection of absorbed influences, parents, teachers, enemies, society, some helpful, most harmful. Unless tamed, this voice will sabotage every ambition you hold. When I fought my first duel at 13 years old, my inner voice told me I would die, that my opponent was stronger, that I was too young. Do you know what I did? I acknowledged these thoughts, then commanded them to serve me instead of weaken me. This is the warrior's approach to inner dialogue. You do not silence the voice. You discipline it. You transform it from a critic to a strategist, from an obstacle to an ally. Most live their entire lives never realizing they can control this voice. They accept its criticisms as truth, its fears as reality, its limitations as their own. This is mental slavery of the highest order. The untrained mind talks constantly, but says nothing of value. The trained mind speaks selectively and with purpose, even to itself. Listen now to your inner dialogue. What is it saying? Does it speak of your strength or your weakness? Does it focus on solutions or problems? Does it empower or diminish you? This voice will be with you in your darkest moments, your greatest challenges, your most important decisions. Will it be an ally or an enemy when you need it most? Let me teach you how to transform this voice. First, become aware of it as separate from yourself. When it speaks, ask, is this thought serving my purpose or hindering it? Learn to watch your thoughts rather than automatically believing them. Second, speak to yourself with the authority of a commander, not the timidity of a servant. Your inner voice should address you with strength, conviction, clarity. Never with doubt, never with fear, never with excuses. I trained myself to think in commands, not questions. Not can I defeat this opponent, but strike now, not what. If I fail, but advance without hesitation. This transforms your inner dialogue from a source of weakness to a source of power. Third, eliminate the vocabulary of weakness from your inner language. Never tell yourself, I'll try. Either you will or you won't. Never ask, what if I can't? If you consider failure, you invite it. Never think, this is too difficult. Nothing is difficult for the properly trained mind. But let me ask you this. Have you ever truly listened to how you speak to yourself? Most haven't. They let this critical inner voice run unchecked, not realizing it shapes every action, every decision, every outcome in their lives. When faced with challenge, the untrained mind says, this is impossible. The warrior's mind says, this is necessary, therefore it can be done. When faced with fear, the untrained mind says, retreat to safety. The warrior's mind says, move toward the fear until it dissolves. In my book of 5 rings, I wrote, you must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Your inner voice must reflect this wisdom. It must offer solutions, not limitations, possibilities, not obstacles. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself. If your inner dialogue speaks of weakness, you will become weak. If it speaks of strength, you will become strong. Choose your inner words as carefully as you would choose your weapons. The mastery of inner dialogue requires daily practice. Each morning, set the tone of your internal conversation. Command your thoughts. Today I will think only thoughts that serve my purpose. I reject all thoughts that weaken my resolve. When negative thoughts arise, and they will, do not fight them directly. This only gives them power. Instead, replace them immediately with thoughts that serve you. Like a skilled swordsman, don't clash with force, redirect it. I trained myself to transform "I am afraid" into "I am alert." To transform "I might fail" into "I am learning." To transform "this is difficult" into "this is my path to mastery." The situation remained the same, but my relationship to it completely changed. Remember, the most dangerous opponent lives inside your head. Either you will conquer this opponent, or you will be conquered by it. There is no middle ground. Train your inner voice to be your strongest ally, your wisest counselor, your most loyal supporter. When the world says you cannot succeed, this voice should whisper, "Watch me." Before you act wrong, you think wrong. Every failure, every defeat, every moment of weakness can be traced back to a single origin: flawed thinking. The action is merely the visible result of an invisible process that began in the mind. Most people focus on changing their actions while leaving their thoughts untouched. This is why they repeat the same mistakes. This is why they remain trapped in cycles of defeat. They are treating the symptom while ignoring the disease. But here's what most people don't understand. Thought is the seed. Action is merely the harvest. What you plant in your mind will inevitably grow into the garden of your life, whether you intend it or not. When I trained swordsmen, I did not begin with technique. I began with perception, how they saw the opponent, how they understood distance, how they perceived opportunity. Because a warrior who sees incorrectly will act incorrectly. No matter how much he has trained, your thoughts are not neutral. They are either aligned with your purpose or opposed to it. They either strengthen your resolve or weaken it. There is no middle ground in the mind of a warrior. Let me show you the path of mastery. Become aware of your thoughts before they become actions. Intercept weakness at its source. Replace it with strength before it manifests in the physical world. Once faced an opponent who was physically superior in every way. Stronger, faster, more experienced. But I saw something he did not. His thoughts betrayed him before his body moved. His eyes showed hesitation. His breathing revealed doubt. I defeated his mind first, his body followed. This is how thought becomes action, first as an impulse, then as subtle physical change, finally as visible movement. The master intervenes at the earliest stage. The amateur reacts to the final stage when it's already too late. But let me ask you this. How aware are you of your thought patterns? Do you notice the ideas that precede your defeats? The mental habits that lead to your failures? Most never make this connection. When you fail at anything, a relationship, a business, a creative pursuit, trace it back to its mental origin. What thought led to this outcome? What perception set you on this path? This is how wisdom is born. In combat, a single moment of fear creates tension. Tension slows movement. Slow movement means death. The sequence begins with thought and ends with consequence. The wise warrior interrupts this chain at its source. Your daily thoughts are drafting the blueprint of your future. Each mental habit is laying foundation for who you will become. Are you building a fortress or a prison with your thinking? Most believe their thoughts reflect reality. The master knows thoughts create reality. When I entered battle believing victory was certain, it became certain. Not through magic, but through the subtle way thought shapes action. The untrained mind reacts to circumstances. The warrior's mind creates circumstances through intentional thought. One is swept by the current, the other diverts rivers. I trained my students to recognize thought patterns that lead to defeat, comparison with others, fixation on outcome, dwelling on past failures, anticipating pain. These thoughts are poison to effective action. Replace them immediately with their opposites. Focus on your own path, concentration on process, learning from but not living in the past, acceptance of necessary pain. These thoughts breed victory. As naturally as rain feeds crops, examine your defeats closely. What thought preceded the failure? Was it impatience, doubt, arrogance? Identify this pattern, and you hold the key to future victory. In my years of battle, I discovered that most defeats came not from lack of skill, but from thoughts that undermined skill. A swordsman thinking, "I might die," fights differently than one thinking, "I will cut through." The technique may be identical, the outcome vastly different. The mind justifies weakness before permitting it. It creates a rational explanation for why you should give up, give in, or give less than your best. Recognize these justifications as the enemies they are. Your thoughts will present these justifications as wisdom, as self-preservation, as reasonable caution. Do not be deceived. The mind that seeks comfort over growth will clothe surrender in the garments of sensibility. This is why I say, before you act wrong, you think wrong. Correct the thought, and the action corrects itself. Master the mind, and you master life. When I wrote that you must become the enemy, I meant you must enter his mind, understand his thoughts. This same principle applies to your inner battles. Become aware of the thoughts that defeat you. Know them better than they know themselves. Then transform them before they transform you. To control your mind, let go of what controls it. This paradox contains the deepest wisdom of mental mastery. Most seek to gain control through accumulation, more knowledge, more techniques, more options. The true master seeks control through elimination, fewer attachments, fewer distractions, fewer concerns. What weakens the mind? Attachment to outcomes, to opinions, to comfort, to identity. These are the chains that bind your potential. These are the weights that slow your sword. But here's what most people don't understand. Attachment is not commitment. Commitment moves you forward with full force. Attachment holds you back with fear of loss. When I fought my duels, I entered fully committed to victory, but completely detached from the outcome. If death came, I accepted it. This detachment didn't weaken my resolve. It purified it. It removed hesitation, doubt, and fear from my mind, leaving only perfect action. The attached mind is easily controlled. Show it what it wants. It moves toward it. Show it what it fears. It runs from it. The detached mind is sovereign. It moves according to purpose, not reaction. You think attachment makes you strong, that caring deeply means clinging tightly. This is the great misconception. Caring deeply while holding lightly, this is the warrior's way. Full commitment paired with complete acceptance of all possible outcomes. I walked into every battle prepared to die. This wasn't fatalism, it was freedom. When you release attachment to life itself, what lesser thing can control you? What threat can manipulate you? What loss can disturb you? But let me ask you this. What are you holding so tightly that it's strangling your potential? What outcome must happen for you to feel successful? What opinion must others have of you for you to feel worthy? These attachments are not motivations, they are limitations. The need for approval controls you. The need for certainty controls you. The need for comfort controls you. The need to be right controls you. With each attachment, you surrender a piece of your mental sovereignty. Release attachment to your identity, even as a warrior. In my life, I was swordsman, painter, writer, teacher. I attached to none of these roles. They were expressions of my path, not definitions of my worth. When you attach to an identity, you become defensive when it's threatened. Your mind narrows. You miss opportunities that don't fit your self-image. The master remains formless, like water, adapting to any container. Release attachment to methods. I defeated opponents using swords, sticks, oars, and once nothing at all. When you marry a method, you divorce innovation. The attached mind says, "This is the way." The detached mind asks, "What does this moment require?" Release attachment to past victories. Yesterday's triumph means nothing today. I never counted my wins because each one existed only in the past. The warrior's mind lives in the present, the only place where power can be exercised. Release attachment to comfort. Comfort is the prison most never try to escape. The mind that seeks ease over growth remains small. I sought discomfort deliberately, sleeping outside, training in the rain, facing stronger opponents, because comfort weakens while adversity strengthens. Even wisdom becomes a cage when clung to too tightly. I revised my understanding throughout my life. What I knew at 20, I discarded at 30. What I knew at 30, I refined at 40. Hold your knowledge with an open palm, not a closed fist. In my book of 5 rings, I wrote, "You must understand void as the void and non-void as the non-void." Detachment is this void, the empty space from which all possibilities emerge. When your mind clings to nothing, it becomes capable of everything. Detachment is not indifference. The opposite. It is engagement without entanglement. It is caring deeply about your actions while releasing your grip on their fruits. It is giving everything while demanding nothing. The warrior goes to battle fully committed, but completely detached. He fights with total presence, but holds no outcome as necessary. He values victory, but does not need it to validate his worth. This is the paradox of power through detachment. Practice this daily. Identify what controls your thoughts. Is it the need for status, the fear of rejection, the pursuit of comfort, the avoidance of pain? Name these attachments, then consciously release them. Feel the freedom this creates in your mind. When attached to winning, you tense before the strike. When detached, your movement flows naturally, efficiently, powerfully. This principle applies to all action, physical, verbal, mental. Attachment creates friction. Detachment creates flow. This is why I say, to control your mind, let go of what controls it. Commitment without attachment, purpose without desperation, action without anxiety. This is the unstoppable mind. A full mind cannot learn. An arrogant one cannot grow. There is a story told about a scholar who visited a Zen master seeking knowledge. As the master poured tea, the scholar spoke continuously of what he already knew. The master kept pouring, even as the tea overflowed the cup. "Stop!" cried the scholar. "The cup is full." The master replied, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions. How can I show you wisdom unless you first empty your cup?" This story contains the essence of mental mastery. The greatest obstacle to your growth is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. It is not weakness. It is the facade of strength. It is not external resistance. It is internal rigidity. But here's what most people don't understand. True emptiness is not ignorance. It is the suspension of premature judgment. It is the willingness to see without preconception. It is the courage to be a beginner, even after years of mastery. When I reached my greatest heights as a swordsman, I practiced as if I knew nothing. Each morning, I approached my training with an empty cup. This is why I continued to evolve while others stagnated. They protected what they knew. I questioned it daily. Pride fills your cup with stale water. Humility empties it for fresh insight. The difference between the master and the amateur is not that one knows more, it is that one is willing to know less in order to discover more. Defeated many technically superior swordsmen because they came to battle full of knowledge but empty of awareness. They fought from memory while I fought from presence. Their cups were full of techniques. Mine was empty, ready to respond to what actually existed in that moment. But let me ask you this. How often do you approach life with a genuinely empty cup? How frequently do you set aside what you know to see what is actually before you? Most never do this. They filter all experience through existing beliefs, missing what contradicts their expectations. The beginner's mind is the strongest because it holds no preconceptions. It sees what is, not what should be. It responds to reality, not to internal dialogue about reality. Cultivate this mind daily, hourly, with each breath. How? Question your certainties. Challenge your expertise. View familiar situations as if encountering them for the first time. Ask, what am I missing? What if the opposite of what I believe is true? When you master a skill, there is a dangerous moment when you believe you have nothing left to learn. This is when growth stops. This is when vulnerability begins. The true master never reaches this point because he never stops emptying his cup. I studied swordsmanship for decades, yet before each practice, I would say to myself, today I know nothing. Today I must discover everything again. This mindset kept my perception fresh, my technique evolving, my mind humble. Arrogance creates blind spots, areas of weakness invisible to you but obvious to others. These blind spots eventually become the cause of defeat. The empty cup eliminates blind spots because it assumes they exist and actively seeks them out. In my duels, I defeated many who were superior in technique because they couldn't see beyond their training. They fought the battle they expected, not the one that was happening. Their cups were too full to adapt when I presented something unfamiliar. Empty your cup of expectations. They color your perception and corrupt your response. Empty your cup of past successes. Yesterday's victory often prevents tomorrow's growth. Empty your cup of external validation. The need for approval fills your mind with others' priorities rather than your purpose. The master's strength is not in what he has acquired, but in what he has discarded. Not in what he knows, but in what he has unlearned. Not in what he possesses, but in what he has released. When faced with failure, the full cup says, "This shouldn't have happened." The empty cup asks, "What can I learn from this?" When faced with contradiction, the full cup says, "This cannot be true." The empty cup says, "Perhaps I don't understand yet." I wrote in my book of 5 rings, "From one thing, know 10,000 things." This is only possible with an empty cup. The full mind sees only what it already knows. The empty mind perceives connections, patterns, and principles beyond its existing knowledge. You think expertise means accumulation. It does not. It means distillation, reducing the complex to the essential, discarding the unnecessary, focusing on fundamental principles rather than endless techniques. After 30 years of training, my approach became simpler, not more complex. I eliminated what was unnecessary until only essence remained. This is the path of mastery, not adding, but subtracting until only truth remains. Practice emptying your cup daily. Before meetings, say to yourself, "I don't know what will happen here." Before conversations, "I don't know what I will hear." Before decisions, "I don't know what is best yet." This mental reset creates space for genuine insight. Remember, a full mind cannot learn, an arrogant one cannot grow. Empty your cup not once, but continuously. This is how the mind stays sharp, adaptable, and unstoppable. Focus is the silence that cuts through chaos. The modern world conspires against your focus. It bombards you with notifications, headlines, alerts, each one stealing a fragment of your mental power. Most people have surrendered to this assault without realizing what they've lost: the ability to think deeply, to maintain singular attention, to achieve mental silence. Without this silence, your mind becomes a marketplace, loud, cluttered, confused. With it, your mind becomes a blade, sharp, clear, powerful. But here's what most people don't understand. Focus is not just concentration, it is elimination. It is the ruthless removal of everything that dilutes your mental energy. It is saying no to 1,000 things to say yes to one thing with your full being. When I fought my duels, I did not focus on my opponent's movements. I focused between them, on the silence between actions, the empty space where opportunity lived. This silence was not absence, it was presence of the highest order. It was pure awareness without distraction. You think your distractions are external. They are not. They are internal. The person who cannot sit in silence for 10 minutes is not distracted by noise. They are fleeing from themselves. External stimulation merely provides an excuse to avoid internal discipline. If you cannot quiet your mind, you cannot hear the subtle signals that lead to victory. You cannot perceive the patterns beneath the obvious. You cannot access the deeper wisdom that exists beyond conscious thought. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you experienced true mental silence? Not sleep, not zoning out, but conscious, alert stillness. Most have never known this state. They have never experienced their mind at its most powerful. The untrained mind is like a drunken monkey, jumping from thought to thought, unable to remain still, unable to focus on what matters. The trained mind is like a sentinel, alert, unwavering, seeing everything but distracted by nothing. How to achieve this? Start by eliminating. Not by adding more meditation, more techniques, more apps, but by removing what fractures your attention. Reduce inputs, silence notifications, create boundaries around your time and your space. I lived in a bare room with minimal possessions. Not from poverty, but from clarity. Each object you own demands attention. Each commitment you make divides your focus. Simplify your external world to strengthen your internal one. Train your focus like a muscle, incrementally, consistently, patiently. Begin with 1 minute of complete concentration on a single object or task. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back. 1 minute becomes 5. 5 becomes 20. This is how mental strength is built. Develop rituals that signal to your mind that it is time for deep focus. For me, it was arranging my sword before meditation. For you, it might be clearing your desk, turning off devices, or simply taking 3 deep breaths. The ritual itself is less important than its consistency. Focus requires boundaries. You must become comfortable saying no to others and to yourself. Every time you say yes to a distraction, you say no to your deepest work. Every time you interrupt yourself, you weaken your mental discipline. In combat, the distracted mind is a dead mind. The warrior who thinks about dinner during battle has already lost. The same principle applies to your creative work, your relationships, your personal growth. Presence is power. Distraction is defeat. The modern habit of constant task switching is mental suicide. It creates an illusion of productivity while guaranteeing mediocrity. The master works deeply on one thing, fully immersed, fully present. Most people confuse busyness with effectiveness. They wear distraction like a badge of honor. I'm too busy, they say, not realizing this admission is one of weakness, not strength. The master is never too busy. He is focused on what matters and eliminates everything else. I wrote that the way of the warrior is to master the virtue of his weapons. Your most powerful weapon is your focused attention. Master it, and all other skills become more potent. Fail to master it, and even your greatest talents become diluted. Noise is not just external, it is internal. Your own thoughts create static that drowns out deeper wisdom. Learn to quiet these thoughts, not by forcing them into silence, but by becoming so absorbed in your purpose that they naturally fade into the background. The noise will always be there, calling for your attention, demanding your energy. The warrior does not eliminate noise. He develops the ability to focus so completely that noise becomes irrelevant. Practice this daily. Choose one important task. Give it your complete attention for a defined period. No phone, no email, no internal dialogue about other concerns, just pure undivided focus. This is mental training of the highest order. When you feel the pull of distraction, and you will, recognize it as resistance, as the mind's attempt to avoid the discomfort of deep focus. Do not yield to this resistance. Move toward it, through it, beyond it. In my life, I discovered that the greatest insights, the most powerful techniques, the deepest wisdom came not from more information, but from deeper silence. Not from adding, but from subtracting until only the essential remained. Remember, focus is the silence that cuts through chaos. Cultivate this silence daily. Protect it fiercely. It is the source of your mental power and the foundation of an unstoppable mind. The man who accepts death fears nothing. In the mountains of Harima province, I once spent 3 days meditating on my own death. I visualized it in excruciating detail. The final breath, the darkness, the nothingness. I felt the cold earth against my back. I heard the wind continue without me. I saw the world moving on, indifferent to my absence. This practice was not morbid fascination. It was liberation. For when I arose on the third day, something had changed within me. The fear that governs most men had lost its grip. I had stared into the abyss until the abyss blinked. But here's what most people don't understand. Death meditation is not about death at all. It is about life, lived with full awareness of its impermanence. It is about priorities, clarified by mortality. It is about freedom from the 1,000 trivial fears that paralyze action. When you accept that you will die, truly accept it, not as an abstract concept, but as imminent reality, your mind undergoes a profound transformation. Petty concerns fall away, social anxiety dissolves, the need for approval evaporates. What remains is clarity, purpose, and an almost supernatural calm. Most live in denial of death, and this denial creates a mind divided against itself, half knowing the truth, half rejecting it. This internal conflict saps mental strength, creates anxiety, and prevents full engagement with life. The warrior resolves this conflict through direct confrontation with mortality. But let me ask you this. Have you ever deeply contemplated your own death? Not with fear, not with denial, but with clear-eyed acceptance? Most never do. They remain half asleep, half alive, because they cannot bear to look at the thing that would most fully awaken them. I began each morning with death meditation. I ended each day the same way. This practice did not diminish my life. It amplified it. Colors became more vivid, conversations more meaningful, choices more deliberate. The petty irritations that consume most people's mental energy simply disappeared. When I faced opponents in duels, they faced a man who had already died in his mind. What threat could they pose to someone who had accepted death? What fear could weaken my sword? What hesitation could slow my cut? None. This is the warrior's advantage. Complete acceptance eliminates fear. The untrained mind treats death as an enemy, to be avoided at all costs. The warrior's mind treats death as a counselor who clarifies what matters. Will this concern mean anything when I am dying? This single question cuts through confusion like a blade through silk. Begin this practice simply. For 10 minutes each day, contemplate your mortality. Visualize your death in detail. Feel the physical sensations. Imagine your last breath. See loved ones continuing without you. Don't rush through this exercise. Don't intellectualize it. Experience it fully. At first, this practice will create discomfort, even anxiety. This is natural. You're confronting humanity's deepest fear. Continue despite this discomfort. On the other side of this fear lies a mind of exceptional clarity and calm. I wrote in my Dakota, my way of walking alone. Accept the fact that you will die. Never deviate from this awareness. This was not philosophical posturing. It was practical instruction for mental mastery. The mind that fully accepts death becomes unstoppable in life. When you face any challenge, any threat, any hardship, compare it to death. Is this pain comparable to death? Is this loss comparable to death? Is this criticism, this setback, this temporary defeat comparable to death? Of course not. This perspective immediately puts difficulty in its proper place. Death. Meditation reveals the absurdity of postponement. We say, I'll do that important thing later. I'll have that difficult conversation eventually. I'll pursue that dream someday. Death says, later may never come. What you postpone, you may abandon forever. The warrior lives with urgency born, not of anxiety, but of clarity, not from fear of death, but from complete acceptance of it. This urgency is not frantic activity. It is deliberate action aligned with what truly matters. It is life without procrastination, without hesitation, without regret. Most fear death because they have not truly lived. They have existed, but they have not expressed their deepest purpose. They have survived, but they have not manifested their highest potential. The remedy for the fear of death is not denial. It is more authentic living. In my life, I noticed that the most death-avoiding men were also the most easily controlled, the most susceptible to manipulation. Their fear of mortality made them grasp desperately at security, status, comfort, making them predictable and weak. The death-accepting warrior is neither predictable nor easily controlled. Practice death meditation in ordinary moments. Standing, in line, sitting in traffic waiting for a meeting to start, use these times to remember your mortality. I will die, perhaps today, perhaps in this moment. This is not pessimism. It is the ultimate wake-up call to full presence. Notice how death awareness changes your perspective. Arguments become less important, grudges seem pointless, material possessions lose their grip. What emerges instead is appreciation for the moment, clarity about priorities, and courage to live according to your deepest values. Remember, the man who accepts death fears nothing. Not failure, not rejection, not pain, not loss. This fearlessness is not recklessness, it is freedom. It is the foundation of an unstoppable mind. A calm mind watches, a weak mind reacts. In the heat of battle, I once faced an opponent known for his explosive temper. He was physically stronger, technically skilled, and more experienced. But I saw his weakness immediately. His emotions controlled his sword. When I deliberately delayed my attack, his impatience grew. When I retreated slightly, his anger flared. With each emotional reaction, his technique deteriorated. I defeated him not by matching his strength, but by remaining emotionally neutral. While he exhausted himself through reaction, this is the power of observation without judgment, the ability to see clearly without being swept away by emotional response. The untrained mind immediately judges everything it encounters, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, helpful or harmful. These judgments trigger emotional reactions. These reactions cloud perception and weaken response. But here's what most people don't understand. Judgment is not discernment. Judgment adds emotional weight to perception. Discernment sees clearly without this added weight. The warrior discerns everything but judges nothing. When you label an experience as bad, you create suffering beyond the experience itself. When you label a person as enemy, you stop seeing them clearly. When you label a situation as unfair, you blind yourself to the opportunities within it. Judgment obscures reality. The untrained mind believes its judgments are reality. This is terrible, becomes not an opinion but a perceived fact. The trained mind recognizes judgments as mental constructs, useful sometimes, limiting always. It holds these judgments lightly, if at all. But let me ask you this. How many of your thoughts are pure observation, and how many are judgment? For most, nearly every perception comes bundled with evaluation. He shouldn't have said that. This shouldn't be happening. I should be further along. These judgments create a constant state of mental friction. I trained myself to watch my own thoughts without becoming entangled in them. When anger arose during battle, I didn't suppress it. I observed it. Anger is present, not I am angry. This slight shift in perspective created crucial distance between myself and the emotion. The anger was there, but it did not control my sword. This practice extends beyond emotions to all experience. Pain arises. You observe it without labeling it unbearable. Fear arises. You notice it without being controlled by it. Doubt arises. You acknowledge it without surrendering to it. This is mental sovereignty of the highest order. The untrained mind believes freedom comes from controlling external conditions. The warrior knows true freedom comes from observing internal conditions without being dominated by them. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control your relationship to what happens. Begin this practice in daily life before attempting it in critical moments. When someone criticizes you, watch your defensive reaction arise. Don't suppress it. Don't act on it. Simply observe it with interest. Defensiveness is appearing. Feel the physical sensations. Notice the thoughts that accompany it. This observation without judgment gradually diminishes the reaction's power over you. Apply this to physical sensations. When discomfort arises during training, during illness, during hardship, observe it closely. Break it down into pure sensation without the added mental label of bad or unbearable. You'll discover that much of suffering comes not from the sensation itself, but from your judgment of it. I wrote in my teachings, "It is difficult to understand the universe if you only study one planet. Similarly, it is impossible to respond wisely if you only acknowledge comfortable emotions while rejecting uncomfortable ones." The warrior observes the full spectrum of internal experience with equal interest. This practice reveals a profound truth. You are not your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations. You are the awareness that observes them. This realization creates unshakable mental stability. The observed cannot control the observer. The watched cannot dictate to the watcher. When you fight, when you create, when you lead, do so from this watchful awareness, not from reactivity. The reactive mind acts from emotion, from habit, from conditioning. The observant mind acts from clarity, from choice, from wisdom. The difference in results is immeasurable. Notice the immediate relief that comes with pure observation. If you're angry, simply observing anger is present without judgment creates instant space around the emotion. If you're afraid, simply noting fear is arising without resistance begins to dissolve its grip. This is not suppression. It is clarity. In my final duel, I faced a renowned swordsman who had studied my technique for years. He believed he knew exactly how I would attack, but I had no fixed technique. I had only watchful awareness that responded to what was, not to what should be. His expectations blinded him. My observation revealed him. The judgmental mind lives in a self-created reality, increasingly disconnected from what is. The observant mind stays connected to actual conditions, actual possibilities, actual openings. One lives in illusion, the other in truth. One reacts, the other responds. Practice this continually. When an emotion arises, observe it without judgment. When a thought appears, watch it without believing it. When a sensation occurs, feel it without resisting it. This is not passive acceptance. It is active awareness that precedes wise action. Remember, a calm mind watches, a weak mind reacts. Develop the habit of observation without judgment, and you build the foundation of an unstoppable mind. Doubt is the assassin of momentum. In my 61st duel, I faced a swordsman of exceptional skill. As we circled each other, I saw an opening, small, temporary, but real. In that fraction of a second, doubt whispered, "It could be a trap." Had I listened, had I hesitated even slightly, I would have lost my advantage and perhaps my life. Instead, I cut through doubt as decisively as I cut through my opponent. The opening was real. My strike was true. The duel was won. This is the warrior's relationship with doubt. Not its absence, for doubt will always arise, but its irrelevance to action. The untrained mind believes it must wait for doubt to disappear before moving forward. The warrior mind moves through doubt, recognizing it as merely another thought, not a command to be obeyed. But here's what most people don't understand. Doubt is natural. It is not a sign of weakness. It is simply the mind's attempt to prevent error. The problem is not doubt's presence, but your response to it. Hesitation in a crucial moment is the true enemy. Most people treat doubt as the end of the thinking process. I have doubt, therefore I must wait. The warrior treats doubt as the middle of the process. I notice doubt, but I will act anyway if action serves my purpose. This distinction seems small, but creates vastly different outcomes. The untrained mind seeks perfect certainty before acting, something that rarely exists in consequential matters. The trained mind seeks sufficient clarity, then moves decisively despite remaining uncertainty. It understands that motion creates new information that standing still never could. But let me ask you this. How often have you postponed important action while waiting for doubt to disappear? How many opportunities have passed while you gathered? Just a little more information, waited for just a little more confirmation, sought just a little more reassurance. This is how lives of potential become lives of regret. I trained my students to act from committed uncertainty. You will never know everything. You will never eliminate all risk. Act anyway, with full commitment to your choice. This approach builds decision-making power that hesitation destroys. Doubt appears most strongly at the threshold of meaningful action. When you are about to speak an important truth, take a significant risk, create something new. Doubt intensifies precisely because the action matters. Recognize this pattern. When doubt spikes, it often signals you're on the right path, not the wrong one. The habitual hesitator develops a crippling relationship with doubt. Each time they obey its counsel to wait, to postpone, to gather more information, they strengthen doubt's authority in their mind. Soon, doubt becomes the default response to any challenge. This is mental subjugation. To reclaim your authority, start with small actions against doubt. When it says, check that email one more time, proceed with your planned work instead. When it says, wait until you feel more confident, speak up anyway. Each act of defiance weakens doubt's grip on your decision-making. Understand the true function of doubt. It is meant to be advisory, not authoritative. Hear its concerns, extract any useful information it offers, then decide whether its caution serves your purpose in this moment. Often it does not. In combat, I noticed that the fatal moment for many warriors was not when they made the wrong decision, but when they made no decision. Hesitation created vulnerability that decisive action, even imperfect action, would have prevented. The lesson extends beyond swordplay to all domains of life. Distinguish between thoughtful assessment and paralyzing doubt. Assessment says, let me understand the situation clearly. Doubt says, I can never understand enough to act confidently. One is strategic pause, the other is indefinite paralysis. The antidote to doubt is not certainty, it is purpose. When your purpose is clear and compelling, doubt loses its power to delay action. I am uncertain, but I am committed becomes your stance. This combination of intellectual humility and decisive action characterizes the warrior's mind. Practice making clean decisions. When you decide, decide completely, without hedging, without half measures, without keeping one foot on the shore as you step into the boat. This commitment doesn't guarantee success, but it creates the conditions for it. Hesitation guarantees only stagnation. The momentum of decisive action creates clarity that hesitation never can. Once moving, you see obstacles you couldn't see. While standing still, you discover resources you didn't know you had. You build confidence that no amount of planning could have generated. In my life, I found that regret came not from decisive action that failed, but from hesitation that prevented action entirely. The former taught valuable lessons. The latter taught only the bitter taste of opportunity forever lost. Train your mind to recognize doubt, not as a stop sign, but as a speed bump, something to be noticed, respected, but ultimately moved beyond. Your purpose is the road. Doubt is merely a feature of the terrain. Keep moving toward what matters. Remember, doubt is the assassin of momentum. Act with commitment despite uncertainty. This is the unstoppable mind. Every time you argue with yourself, you fracture your strength. I once observed a talented swordsman sabotage his own training through endless internal debate. Should I practice this technique or that one? Is this stance better or is that one superior? Have I trained enough today or should I continue? His skill never reached its potential because his mind was divided against itself. He had become his own worst opponent. The untrained mind believes internal debate is thorough thinking. The warrior knows it is often mental weakness masquerading as intellectual rigor. There comes a point where further deliberation diminishes rather than improves decision quality. But here's what most people don't understand. The habit of internal argument doesn't lead to better decisions. It leads to decision fatigue and diminished willpower. Each internal debate depletes your mental energy. Each moment of hesitation fractures your momentum. The phenomenon exists because the human mind evolved to seek certainty and avoid risk. This served our ancestors avoiding predators. It sabotages modern humans making decisions under complexity and uncertainty. The internal debate is your ancient brain trying to create certainty where none exists. When I prepared for battle, I eliminated internal debate through pre-commitment. I decided in advance, if my opponent does X, I will respond with Y. No debate required in the moment, no hesitation, no mental friction, only clean, decisive action. But let me ask you this. How many decisions do you remake repeatedly? The same dilemmas revisited daily. Should I exercise? Should I work on my most important project first? Should I speak the difficult truth? These recurring debates drain your mental energy while creating the illusion of careful thought. The solution is pre-made decisions, principles and rules you establish in moments of clarity to guide behavior in moments of temptation, doubt, or fatigue. I train at dawn every day, regardless of how I feel. Once decided, it's no longer a daily choice subject to debate. It's simply what you do. The warrior eliminates trivial decisions entirely. I wore the same style of clothing, ate similar foods, followed consistent routines, not from lack of imagination, but from strategic elimination of decision points. Preserve your mental energy for what truly matters. For important but recurring decisions, create personal rules. I never compromise on these three values. I always speak the truth, even when difficult. I never miss these foundational habits. Rules end debate before it begins, conserving mental strength for genuine challenges. The habit of internal argument creates more than mental fatigue. It creates a fragmented will. Part of you commits to a path, while another part undermines it. This division of purpose ensures mediocre outcomes. The warrior unifies his faculties toward a single aim. I taught my students, make your decisions clean. By this I meant decide. Completely, without reservation, without keeping options unnecessarily open, without mental footnotes and conditions that weaken commitment. Half decisions lead to half results. When you make a decision, close the door on alternatives unless compelling new information emerges. The mind that keeps revisiting choices, wondering, what if I had chosen differently, sabotages present action with pointless rumination. Make your choices, then focus entirely on executing them well. Recognize decision quality exists on a curve. Early in deliberation, more thinking improves decisions, but beyond a certain point unique to each situation, additional deliberation destroys value through diminishing returns and increasing costs of delay. Learn to identify this inflection point. When facing truly consequential, irreversible decisions, thorough deliberation is justified, but most decisions are neither consequential nor irreversible. Apply appropriate decision-making effort rather than treating every choice as existential. If you remain genuinely uncertain after appropriate deliberation, recognize that action itself will generate new information. When in doubt, act becomes not recklessness, but recognition that movement creates clarity that further reflection cannot. The habit of clean decision-making builds confidence that transfers across domains. When you trust yourself to make commitments and keep them, your relationship with uncertainty transforms. You no longer require perfect information because you trust your ability to adapt to whatever emerges. Practice ending internal debates consciously. When you notice circular thinking, say to yourself, "I have considered enough. Now I decide." Then commit fully to your choice. The relief that follows is not just psychological, it is the sensation of unified mental strength becoming available. For action, in critical moments, your capacity for decisive action will be proportional to your habit of ending internal arguments. The mind accustomed to endless debate will debate even when immediate action is required. The mind trained in clean decision-making will act when action serves purpose. Remember, every time you argue with yourself, you fracture your strength. Make decisions cleanly, commit to them fully, and execute them with unified purpose. This is the unstoppable mind. The unstoppable mind moves by principle, not by emotion. When I was 30 years old, I wrote a code for myself, a set of principles that would govern my decisions regardless of circumstance, regardless of emotion. This code was not created from abstract philosophy, but from blood-earned wisdom. Each principle reflected a lesson paid for with scars, with failures, with the lives of opponents who had chosen differently. This code became my mental foundation. When confusion arose, when emotions threatened clarity, when temptation pulled at my resolve, I returned to these principles. They were not suggestions to be considered. They were commands to be obeyed. But here's what most people don't understand. A personal code is not a limitation on freedom. It is the foundation of true freedom. Without clear principles, you become a slave to momentary emotion, to social pressure, to the path of least resistance. Your behavior becomes reactive rather than intentional. The unprincipled mind must remake each decision based on how it feels in the moment. The principled mind makes decisions once, deeply, then applies them consistently across situations. This consistency creates mental efficiency, clarity, and power unavailable to those who reinvent themselves daily based on mood. Emotion is valuable as information, but dangerous as the primary guide for decisions. Emotions fluctuate like weather. They provide important data about your inner state, but building your life on their guidance is like building a house on shifting sand. Principles provide the solid ground beneath. But let me ask you this. What non-negotiable principles currently govern your decisions? What lines will you not cross regardless of benefit? What commitments will you keep regardless of cost? If your answer is unclear, you have identified the source of much indecision, inconsistency, and mental weakness in your life. Create your code systematically. Identify the values you want to embody, not in the abstract, but as expressed through concrete behavior. I value courage means nothing until translated into I speak difficult truths regardless of consequences, or I act despite fear when purpose requires it. Your code should be simple enough to remember under pressure, but specific enough to guide real decisions. It should address the core domains of your life, your relationship with yourself, with others, with your work, with adversity. It should reflect who you aim to become, not just who you currently are. Once established, your code must be non-negotiable, not because it cannot evolve over time with deeper wisdom, but because exceptions made in moments of temptation, fear, or convenience destroy its power. A principle applied only when convenient is merely a preference, not a principle. The warrior's mind returns to its code when the storms of emotion are strongest. When rage, fear, greed, or pride threaten to overtake reason, the code provides stability. I have already decided how I will act in this situation. Emotion does not get a vote, but establishing a code is only the beginning. You must then align your environment, your relationships, and your habits to support it. Remove temptations that weaken resolve. Distance yourself from those who undermine your principles. Create routines that strengthen commitment. I trained my students to rehearse their principles daily, to visualize applying them in challenging situations before those situations arose. This mental rehearsal ensures that when crisis comes, principle rises to meet it automatically. Without requiring deliberation, in moments where deliberation is a luxury. Your behavior under extreme stress will default to your deepest training, your most ingrained habits. If principled action is not among these default responses, it will be unavailable precisely when most needed. The time to instill principles is before the test, not during it. The principled mind appears rigid to the unprincipled, who mistake flexibility of values for adaptability. True adaptability comes not from shifting principles, but from applying stable principles to changing circumstances. The oak with deep roots can bend without breaking in the storm. In my duels, I encountered many who claimed warrior status, but fought without principle, attacking from behind, using deception, violating agreements. Their lack of code revealed itself as inconsistency, as untrustworthiness, ultimately as weakness that could be exploited. A principled opponent was far more dangerous. Your code should include not just what you will do, but what you will never do. These boundaries are not weaknesses, but foundations of character. I will never betray a trust. I will never act from vengeance. I will never compromise these specific values for material gain. These are not limitations, but definitions of who you are. Live by your code long enough, and it becomes more than behavior. It becomes identity. You no longer think, I follow these principles. You think, oh, this is who I am. At this stage, violating your code would mean violating your sense of self. This creates a level of commitment beyond mere discipline. When emotions rise, and they will, acknowledge them without allowing them to override your principles. I feel fear, but I will act with courage. I feel anger, but I will respond with clarity. I feel temptation, but I will honor my commitments. This internal dialogue reinforces the primacy of principle over emotion. Remember, the unstoppable mind moves by principle, not by emotion. Establish your code. Live by it consistently. Return to it in moments of confusion. This is the foundation of an unstoppable mind. What you train daily becomes who you are permanently. In my lifetime, I crossed swords with many who possessed natural talent, men gifted with speed, with strength, with innate coordination. Yet I defeated them, not because my natural gifts were superior, but because my daily training had created an unnatural mastery. What they did occasionally, I did systematically. What they practiced when inspired, I practiced when exhausted. What they approached as a hobby, I approached as a way of life. The difference between the merely good and the truly exceptional is not talent. It is training. Not occasional effort, but systematic repetition. Not intense, but inconsistent bursts. But patient, persistent rhythm. But here's what most people don't understand. Repetition is not just practice. It is transformation. Each repetition of a thought, of a movement, of a decision, creates neural pathways that eventually become automatic. You are literally building your future self through what you repeat today. The amateur believes mastery comes from discovering the perfect technique. The warrior knows it comes from performing good techniques perfectly through countless repetitions. Mundane actions executed with full presence and precise attention. This is the path to extraordinary capability. Most overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and underestimate what they can accomplish in a year of consistent practice. They seek shortcuts, hacks, and secrets rather than embracing the transformative power of patient repetition. This is why they remain perpetual beginners. But let me ask you this. What are you currently training through daily repetition? Not what you do occasionally or what you intend to do consistently. What patterns are you actually reinforcing through systematic repetition? These patterns, whether chosen consciously or unconsciously, are creating your future capabilities and limitations. I trained specific strikes 10,000 times until my body could execute them perfectly without conscious thought. I practiced drawing my sword until the movement became as natural as breathing. I meditated daily until stillness became my default state rather than an achievement. This wasn't just practice. It was self-creation. The law of rhythm governs mental mastery as surely as it governs music. Interrupted practice creates stuttering progress. Consistent rhythm, even if each individual session seems small, creates momentum that builds upon itself. The power is in the persistence, not the intensity. Most training efforts fail, not because the method is wrong, but because the rhythm is inconsistent. Humans naturally seek variety, novelty, excitement. The warrior understands that embracing necessary. Monotony is the price of extraordinary capability. The willingness to do important things even when they aren't interesting. This separates the master from the amateur. Establish daily non-negotiable practices that align with your highest purpose. These practices should be simple enough to execute, even on your worst days, but substantial enough to create real development over time. Complexity is the enemy of consistency. Simplicity is the friend of sustainable growth. The rhythm of training extends beyond physical skills to mental ones. Train awareness through daily meditation. Train focus through periods of undistracted deep work. Train courage through daily acts that push comfort boundaries. Train clarity through regular reflection and review. These mental muscles respond to repetition just as physical ones do. In my life, I recognize that crisis reveals character, but training creates it. The qualities you exhibit under extreme pressure are simply the habits you've built through thousands of previous repetitions. The calm mind in battle comes not from willing yourself to be calm in that moment, but from having practiced calmness so consistently that it becomes your default. Most seek inspiration before action. The warrior reverses this sequence. Action, first with or without inspiration. Consistent action eventually creates its own inspiration as progress becomes visible. Waiting to feel motivated before beginning consistent practice ensures you never develop mastery. Create triggers for your essential practices, specific times, locations, or preceding activities that automatically initiate your training. I began each day before dawn with the same sequence: meditation, movement, technical practice. The consistency of the trigger created consistency in the practice. Understand that regression is part of progression. There will be days when your performance declines despite consistent practice. This is not failure. It is consolidation. The body and mind sometimes need to step back to leap forward. Maintain rhythm through these plateaus and breakthroughs will follow. The warrior views daily practice not as preparation for some future moment of truth, but as its own moment of truth. Each training session is a battle with your lesser self. Each repetition, a victory over inertia. Approach practice with this level of presence, and the distinction between training and application begins to dissolve. When motivation wanes, and it will rely on discipline. When discipline falters, and it will rely on purpose. When purpose seems distant, and it will rely on ritual. The rhythm must be maintained not because it always feels rewarding, but because interruption restarts. The process of mastery from a weaker position. What separates the extraordinary from the ordinary is not what they do when they feel extraordinary. It is what they do on ordinary days, when inspiration is absent, when conditions are unfavorable, when the path seems mundane. The consistent rhythm of excellence practiced in unremarkable moments. This is the secret of the unstoppable mind. Remember, what you train daily becomes who you are permanently. Choose your practices wisely, execute them consistently, and trust the compounding power of repetition. This is how you build an unstoppable mind. The mind directs the body, but the body feeds the mind. Many seek mental mastery through purely mental means, through meditation, through study, through contemplation. These practices have value, but they are incomplete. The mind and body are not separate entities, but aspects of a single integrated system. To master the mind without addressing the body is like trying to control a horse while ignoring its needs for food, water, and rest. In my years of training, I discovered that physical condition profoundly influences mental capability. When the body is weak, undernourished, or exhausted, the mind becomes susceptible to fear, doubt, and confusion. When the body is strong, well-nourished, and rested, the mind naturally exhibits courage, clarity, and decisiveness. But here's what most people don't understand. Your physical practices are not just supporting your mental skills, they are developing them directly. The way you breathe shapes your emotional state. The way you move influences your thought patterns. The way you hold your body affects your confidence and resolve. The warrior trains the body to serve the mind, but also recognizes that the body trains the mind through its own wisdom. Physical discipline creates mental discipline. Physical strength builds mental strength. Physical endurance develops mental endurance. The two cannot be separated. Most intellectual types dismiss physical training as beneath their concern. Most physical types neglect mental training as too abstract. Both remain incomplete with capacities far below their potential. The integrated warrior develops both in harmony, recognizing that each enhances the other. But let me ask you this. How deliberately do you use your physical state to shape your mental performance? Do you breathe consciously when facing challenges? Do you position your body for optimal thinking? Do you move in ways that generate the mental states you require? Most never consider these powerful levers of mental control. I discovered that before critical duels, controlling my breath was more important than reviewing techniques. Slow, deep breathing calmed overexcitement. Quick, sharp breathing dispelled lethargy. The breath was not just sustaining life, it was programming the nervous system, creating the optimal internal state for the challenge at hand. Similarly, I found that posture was not merely a matter of aesthetics, but of psychology. Standing fully, upright, shoulders back, head level, this physical configuration generated confidence and clarity that was immediately accessible, requiring no complex mental gymnastics. The body's wisdom is simple but profound. The untrained person believes energy is fixed. You either have it or you don't. The warrior understands energy is created and directed through conscious practice. Physical movements generate energy. Breath amplifies and directs it. Focus channels it toward purpose. This energy management is fundamental to mental mastery. Begin by observing the relationship between your physical state and mental performance. Notice how different foods affect your thinking, how different sleep patterns influence your decisions, how different movements impact your emotional state. This awareness alone will reveal patterns most never perceive. Then, experiment deliberately. Before important mental work, try different physical preparations. A brief session of intense exercise. A period of slow, rhythmic movement. Several minutes of controlled breathing. Different physical inputs create different mental outputs. Discover what works for your unique system. Pay particular attention to the breath. It is the most accessible bridge between conscious and unconscious. Control. When thoughts scatter, return to the breath. When emotions overwhelm, return to the breath. When energy depletes, return to the breath. This single practice alone can revolutionize mental performance. The warrior's mind cannot be maintained in a neglected body. Proper nutrition, adequate rest, regular movement. These are not separate from mental training, but essential components of it. The sharpest sword requires proper care of its physical form. Your mind deserves the same respect. Recognize that different mental tasks require different physical states. Creative thinking often flows best after moderate movement that increases. Blood flow without exhaustion. Analytical thinking may benefit from a still, upright posture. Learning often improves with subtle, rhythmic movement. Match your physical state to your mental objectives. In my life, I integrated physical practices deliberately into mental challenges. Before strategic planning, I would perform sword forms to create both energy and calmness. Before creative writing, I would walk in nature to generate expansive thinking. Before meditation, I would sit in progressively more controlled postures to prepare the mind for stillness. Your environment shapes your body, which shapes your mind. Create physical spaces that support optimal posture, breathing, and movement. Remove elements that encourage physical patterns contrary to your mental objectives. The skilled warrior arranges external conditions to support internal mastery. Modern life creates physical patterns that undermine mental performance, collapsed posture from screen use, shallow breathing from stress, physical stagnation from sedentary work. These are not merely physical problems. They actively degrade cognitive function, emotional regulation, and mental clarity. The integrated approach requires no separation between mental time and physical time. While moving, maintain awareness. While thinking, attend to posture and breath. While resting, observe both body and mind. This unified attention dissolves the artificial boundary between physical and mental domains. Remember, the mind directs the body, but the body feeds the mind. Treat this relationship with the respect it deserves. Train your physical vehicle to support and enhance your mental capabilities. This integration creates an unstoppable mind. The weak mind waits. The strong one moves. I once encountered a promising young swordsman who spoke eloquently about technique, strategy, and the philosophy of combat. He studied under respected masters. He analyzed classic texts. He debated minor points of form with impressive knowledge. Yet, in actual combat, he hesitated fatally. His understanding was vast, but his action was delayed. Against an inferior opponent who moved without hesitation, he was defeated. His knowledge, waiting for the perfect moment to be applied, became entirely worthless. This pattern extends far beyond swordplay. In every domain, I have observed individuals who understand what must be done, but delay doing it. They wait for perfect conditions. They wait for absolute certainty. They wait for permission. They wait for motivation. And in this waiting, opportunities pass, skills atrophy, and purpose remains unfulfilled. But here's what most people don't understand. Delay is not caution. It is fear wearing the mask of prudence. True caution evaluates, then acts appropriately to the situation. Delay evaluates endlessly, substituting analysis for action, motion for movement, preparation for performance. The mind that habitually delays develops a particular form of weakness, the inability to cross the threshold from thinking to doing. This threshold grows more intimidating with each capitulation to delay. Soon, even minor actions require enormous mental effort to initiate. This is how capable people become paralyzed by insignificant decisions. Most believe their delay serves a purpose, gathering more information, awaiting better conditions, building greater readiness. Sometimes these justifications have merit, but honest examination reveals the primary function of delay, avoiding the discomfort of action, the responsibility of choice, the risk of failure. But let me ask you this, what are you currently postponing that you know should be done? What necessary actions remain in the purgatory of "I'll get to it soon"? What conversations, decisions, or efforts do you continually reschedule? These delays are not neutral. They actively erode mental strength. I trained my students to act immediately upon realizing something must be done. Not rashly, not without appropriate assessment, but without the unnecessary gap between decision and action that breeds doubt, fear, and ultimately inaction. The delay between recognition and response is where weakness enters. You perceive a threat, but hesitate to address it. You identify an opportunity but postpone pursuing it. You realize a truth but delay speaking it. Each delay diminishes your mental authority, your belief in your ability to translate thought into reality. The habit of immediacy is built through consistent practice in small matters. When you think, "I should organize that drawer," do it immediately. When you think, "I should contact that person," do it now. When you think, "I should research that topic," begin instantly. These small victories over delay build the mental muscle for immediacy in consequential situations. Recognize that perfect conditions are illusions. They exist primarily as justifications for inaction. The master acts within existing conditions, however imperfect, and through this action creates better conditions. Waiting for ideal circumstances ensures they never arrive. The paradox of readiness. Excessive preparation often decreases performance. The general who endlessly reviews plans becomes indecisive in battle. The artist who continuously studies technique never completes work. The entrepreneur who perpetually refines strategy never launches. Preparation serves action. When it displaces action, it becomes harmful. In my lifetime of combat, I observed that the decisive moment typically arrives unannounced, within conditions most would consider inadequate for optimal performance. Those who trained to act despite imperfect circumstances succeeded. Those who waited for perfect readiness never found it. The habit of immediacy creates a particular type of mental authority. When you consistently translate thought into action without unnecessary delay, your mind learns that your commands will be executed. This creates confidence, clarity, and conviction unavailable to the habitual postponer. Immediacy does not preclude strategy. It means that once strategy is established, execution begins without hesitation. It means that once a necessity is recognized, action follows naturally. It means that the gap between I should and I am shrinks toward zero. In my teaching, I distinguished between strategic patience and weakness disguised as patience. Strategic patience is the deliberate decision to wait, because waiting serves your purpose. Weak delay is the habitual postponement of action because action causes discomfort. Know the difference intimately. Train yourself to recognize the physical sensation of delay, the slight resistance that arises when you know action is required, but part of you pulls away from it. This resistance, once recognized, becomes a signal to move immediately rather than a trigger for procrastination. The most dangerous form of delay involves important but non-urgent matters, the meaningful conversation that can happen any time, the significant project with no deadline, the personal development that can begin when things settle down. These essential but postponable actions typically remain in perpetual delay until opportunity passes entirely. Practice the habit of starting. Most delay centers not on continuing action, but on initiating it. The resistance to beginning is typically far greater than the resistance to continuing. Train yourself to start immediately, and momentum will often carry you forward. Remember, the weak mind waits. The strong one moves. Train yourself in the habit of immediacy. This is essential to building an unstoppable mind. Chaos outside is nothing unless it enters your mind. During the Battle of Sekigahara, I witnessed thousands of samurai lose not to superior opponents, but to their own mental disintegration under pressure. As formations broke, as orders contradicted, as unexpected developments arose, their training abandoned them, not because they lacked skill, but because chaos had penetrated their minds. The external disorder had become internal disorder. In contrast, the most formidable warriors maintained internal order regardless of external conditions. When confusion reigned around them, their minds remained clear. When panic spread among others, their breathing remained steady. When strategies collapsed, their purpose remained intact. This capacity to maintain internal stillness amidst external chaos is what separated the merely competent from the truly exceptional. But here's what most people don't understand. External chaos only defeats you when it creates internal chaos. The pressure itself is not the problem. Your relationship to pressure determines its impact. The warrior learns not to eliminate external pressure, but to remain uncompromised by it. Most train for ideal conditions. They practice when rested, focused, and calm. They perform well in controlled environments. Then they face real challenges, with fatigue, with distractions, with unexpected complications, and their performance collapses. They have trained only for conditions that rarely exist when most needed. The untrained mind believes clarity comes from cleared circumstances. The warrior knows clarity persists despite chaotic circumstances. It is generated internally, protected, vigilantly, and maintained deliberately regardless of what exists outside you. But let me ask you this. How does your mind respond when multiple demands arise simultaneously? When your plans are disrupted? When unexpected challenges emerge? When criticism strikes? When failure occurs? These responses reveal the true condition of your mental discipline. I trained deliberately under increasingly chaotic conditions. While learning new techniques, I practiced first in silence, then with minor distractions, then with significant disruptions. Not because combat would be predictable, but precisely because it would not be. The warrior trains for reality, not for convenience. The central skill is psychological compartmentalization, the ability to focus completely on what's relevant while temporarily setting aside what isn't. When 20 concerns demand attention, the disciplined mind addresses one fully, then moves to the next with equal presence. The scattered mind tries to address all simultaneously, achieving nothing. When chaos enters your mind, it manifests as divided attention, emotional reactivity, and circular thinking. These symptoms are signals not to fight harder against external conditions, but to restore internal order first. The battle for external order is lost or won in the internal domain. Practice. Maintaining your center under minor pressures before facing major ones. When small irritations arise, use them as training opportunities. When petty annoyances emerge, treat them as practice for consequential challenges. The skill of remaining mentally still transfers across contexts. The physical dimension is crucial. Under pressure, the untrained body tenses, breath becomes shallow, and posture collapses. These physical responses directly impair cognitive function. Train deliberately to maintain relaxed strength, deep breathing, and aligned posture regardless of circumstances. The body properly aligned helps keep the mind properly aligned. In my duels, I noticed that opponents typically lost composure before losing the match. Their breathing changed first, then their eyes showed distraction, then their stance deteriorated, then their technique failed. The sequence was predictable. Internal disorder preceded external defeat. Develop personal rituals to rapidly restore internal order when chaos begins to penetrate. A specific breathing pattern, a physical gesture, a mental image, a brief centering practice. These tools, developed during calm and practiced until automatic, become invaluable when disorder threatens your clarity. Recognize that maintaining stillness under fire is not about suppressing normal responses, but about channeling them productively. Fear arises, note it without becoming it. Confusion emerges, acknowledge it without surrendering to it. Anger appears, use its energy without letting it use you. The capacity to maintain mental clarity under pressure compounds over time. Each instance where you preserve internal order while facing external chaos strengthens this ability for future challenges. Each surrender to disorder weakens it. Every moment of pressure is either building or diminishing this essential capacity. In my life, I found that preparation prevents the worst forms of mental chaos. Clear priorities established in advance, contingency plans for likely complications, mental rehearsal of challenging scenarios, physical readiness for extended effort. These preventive measures create a mind less susceptible to disorder when pressure arrives, yet even the best preparation meets unexpected developments. At these moments, the difference between success and failure is not the quality of your original plan, but your capacity to think clearly despite disruption. The mind that remains ordered can create new order around it. The mind that descends into chaos can only create more chaos. There exists a state beyond merely avoiding internal chaos, a state where external pressure actually sharpens your focus, heightens your awareness, and elevates your performance. The warrior learns to use the energy of challenging circumstances rather than being depleted by it. This is the alchemy that turns obstacle into opportunity. Remember, chaos outside is nothing, unless it enters your mind. Train to maintain internal order regardless of external conditions. This is essential to building an unstoppable mind. Feelings may rise, but they do not lead. In my 60th duel, I faced an opponent renowned for his emotional intensity. He fought with visible rage, channeling his anger into powerful strikes. The crowd admired his passion. His students emulated his emotional style. Yet I defeated him easily, not because my technique was superior, but because his emotions were leading his sword rather than supporting it. His anger created openings. His passion produced predictability. His intensity generated exhaustion. This is the warrior's relationship with emotion, not suppression, for emotions contain valuable energy and information, not indulgence, for emotions make terrible leaders, but integration, where emotions are acknowledged, even utilized, without ever being given command. But here's what most people don't understand. Emotional detachment is not emotional absence. It is emotional presence without emotional dominance. The warrior feels deeply, fear before battle, pain during challenge, grief during loss. But these feelings inform decisions rather than dictate them. Most vacillate between emotional extremes, either complete suppression, where essential signals are ignored, or complete surrender, where feelings drive behavior regardless of consequence. The master occupies the integrated middle path, where emotions are neither denied nor obeyed blindly. The untrained mind believes emotions are commands. I feel afraid, therefore I must retreat. I feel angry, therefore I must attack. I feel doubtful, therefore I must hesitate. The trained mind recognizes emotions as advisory. Fear is present, suggesting potential danger that should be evaluated. Anger is present, providing energy that should be channeled. Doubt is present, highlighting areas requiring closer examination. But let me ask you this: who currently leads your most important decisions? Your emotional state or your deeper purpose? Most never examine this critical question. They remain unconsciously driven by feelings while believing themselves rational. This illusion of self-direction while being emotionally controlled is common but costly. I trained my students to recognize emotional states without becoming them. Fear is arising rather than I am afraid. Anger is present rather than I am angry. This subtle linguistic shift creates crucial distance between the essential self and the temporary emotional state. You are the awareness that notices emotions, not the emotions themselves. The emotionally controlled person becomes predictable, manipulable, and ineffective. Show them what they fear, they retreat. Show them what they desire, they advance. Show them what angers them, they lose focus. Their behavior is not self-directed, but externally triggered. This creates profound vulnerability. This vulnerability extends beyond combat to all domains. The investor, driven by fear and greed, makes poor decisions. The leader, swayed by insecurity or pride, mismanages teams. The creator, dominated by anxiety or perfectionism, never completes meaningful work. Emotional leadership guarantees suboptimal outcomes. The path of emotional integration begins with non-judgmental awareness. Notice emotions as they arise. Label them specifically, not just bad or good, but disappointment, enthusiasm, irritation, curiosity. Feel their physical signatures in your body. This awareness alone begins to prevent emotional hijacking. Next, practice maintaining purpose while feeling intense emotions. Not by suppressing the feelings, but by remembering that your actions need not follow their direction. I feel exhausted, but my purpose requires continued effort. I feel afraid, but my purpose requires moving forward. I feel angry, but my purpose requires measured response. Develop the capacity to act effectively while experiencing uncomfortable emotions. Most wait until fear subsides before acting. Courageously until motivation appears before beginning difficult work, until confidence emerges before taking risks. This guarantees mediocrity. The master acts aligned with purpose regardless of emotional weather. Recognize that emotional states are temporary. Even the most intense feelings arrive, peak, and dissipate like weather patterns if you neither resist them nor reinforce them through dwelling. The emotion convinced it will last forever is invariably proven wrong by time. Remember this when strong feelings arise. The warrior uses emotion rather than being used by it. Fear heightens awareness. Use this gift without being controlled by it. Anger generates power. Channel this energy without being consumed by it. Joy creates openness. Embrace this state without being attached to it. Each emotion offers something valuable if you remain its master rather than becoming its servant. In my life, I found that physical discipline directly supports emotional discipline. Regular training in challenging conditions develops not just physical strength but emotional resilience. The body properly trained becomes less reactive, less easily triggered into counterproductive emotional states. Physical mastery and emotional mastery advance together. Develop personal practices to rapidly regain emotional sovereignty when temporary hijacking occurs. A specific breathing pattern, a mental reminder of deeper purpose, a physical movement that interrupts reactive patterns, a visualization that restores perspective. These tools, practiced regularly during calm periods, become available during emotional storms. Remember that emotions are often amplified or diminished by thought patterns. Catastrophizing intensifies fear. Rumination deepens sadness. Righteous narrative inflames anger. By recognizing and interrupting these mental patterns, you reduce emotional reactivity without suppressing genuine feeling. The integrated relationship with emotion represents neither cold detachment nor hot reactivity, but clear-seeing engagement with reality. You feel fully while remaining purposefully directed. You access emotional wisdom while avoiding emotional impulsivity. You maintain both passion and precision, both heart and head. Remember, feelings may rise, but they do not lead. Acknowledge. Emotions extract their wisdom, utilize their energy, but never surrender your command to them. This is essential to building an unstoppable mind. The one who conquers himself needs no permission. As my life approached its conclusion, I reflected on the true nature of mastery. I had defeated renowned swordsmen, founded schools of strategy, written enduring texts, mastered multiple arts. Yet these external achievements were merely consequences of the essential victory, the conquest of my own mind. Most seek external validation, external permission, external confirmation of their worth. They look outward for what can only be found inward. They attempt to satisfy through accomplishment what can only be satisfied through self-mastery. This is why even those who achieve great external success often remain internally conflicted, externally driven, and fundamentally unfulfilled. But here's what most people don't understand. External mastery without internal mastery is fundamentally empty. The techniques, the strategies, the victories mean nothing if you remain a slave to your own fear, your own doubt, your own need for approval, your own undisciplined desires. The untrained mind constantly seeks permission from authorities, from peers, from society, from family. Am I allowed to pursue this? Am I permitted to believe that? Am I authorized to become this? This seeking of external sanction is not humility. It is abdication of the essential responsibility to direct your own life. Most remain trapped in externally referenced thinking their entire lives. They organize their efforts around impressing others, meeting external expectations, and securing validation from sources outside themselves. This guarantees a life of reaction rather than creation, of imitation rather than authenticity, of compliance rather than purpose. But let me ask you this. Whose permission are you currently seeking? Whose approval still constrains your decisions? Whose validation do you require before fully expressing your deepest purpose? These invisible authorities continue limiting your potential until consciously examined and deliberately released. In my life, I discovered that self-conquest creates a particular form of authority that no external validation can provide and no external rejection can diminish. When you have mastered your fears, your doubts, your reactive emotions, and your undisciplined desires, you develop unshakable confidence, grounded not in arrogance, but in demonstrated self-governance. This self-mastery is not achieved through self-rejection, but through integration of all aspects of yourself under the leadership of your highest purpose. Not through suppression of your nature, but through its conscious direction. Not through self-punishment, but through principled self-discipline applied with both firmness and compassion. The warrior who has conquered himself becomes internally aligned. His thoughts, emotions, words, and actions move in a single direction rather than contradicting each other. This alignment creates a particular form of power unavailable to those still divided against themselves, still requiring external permission to fully commit. Begin the path of self-conquest by identifying your internal contradictions. Where do your stated values conflict with your actual behaviors? Where do your conscious intentions battle with your unconscious habits? Where do your words promise what your actions fail to deliver? These contradictions reveal the territories within yourself not yet conquered, not yet aligned, not yet mastered. The process of internal alignment requires radical honesty, first with yourself, then with others. Stop pretending to be what you are not. Stop claiming values you do not embody. Stop declaring intentions you do not fulfill. This honesty creates temporary discomfort but permanent integrity, the foundation of authentic confidence. In my teaching, I emphasized that self-conquest creates freedom, not freedom from challenge, from effort, or from pain, but freedom from unnecessary suffering created by resistance to reality. Freedom from the particular misery of living in contradiction to your own deepest values. Freedom from the special torment of knowing what should be done, but lacking the self-mastery to do it. The externally referenced person bases decisions on anticipated reactions from others. What will they think? How will they respond? Will they approve? The self-conquered person bases decisions on alignment with deepest purpose. Is this true? Is this necessary? Does this serve what matters most? This shift in reference point changes everything. Self-conquest creates simplicity. When internally divided, life becomes complex as you try to satisfy contradictory impulses simultaneously. When internally aligned, life simplifies around clear purpose. Decisions become straightforward. Priorities become obvious. Actions become decisive. The mind no longer argues with itself about the essential direction. The final stage of self-conquest is liberation from the need for external acknowledgement of your mastery. The warrior who requires others to recognize his skill remains enslaved to opinion. The warrior who knows his skill, whether acknowledged or not, has achieved true freedom. His validation comes from uncompromising self-knowledge, not flattering external assessment. But self-conquest is never complete. It is not a destination, but a continuous practice. New challenges emerge, new weaknesses reveal themselves, new forms of internal resistance arise. The master does not achieve perfect self-governance once and for all, but rather develops the capacity to recognize and integrate each new manifestation of internal division as it appears. In my final years, I came to see that the countless techniques, strategies, and methods I had mastered were ultimately expressions of a single principle, the alignment of all aspects of the self around essential purpose. The technical details, while important, were secondary to this fundamental integration. When you have conquered yourself, you no longer seek permission to live your purpose. You no longer need approval to express your truth. You no longer require validation to follow your path. This is not rebellion against legitimate authority, but liberation from illegitimate limitation, both external and internal. Remember, the one who conquers himself needs no permission. This self-conquest is the ultimate achievement, making all other achievements possible. This is the foundation of an unstoppable mind.